Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Passions Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the soap opera Passions. I know I've said that so many times, and all of a sudden my brain started to blank. We talk about the soap opera Passions. Yay! I'm your regular host, LeTara, back with a guest who hasn't been on the show in a very long time, but friend of the show, Stephen. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to talk about this week. We did episode 601 through 605. Yes, that's what you watched?
Yeah, it was a bizarre week, but that's very Passions-esque.
I mean, every week is a bizarre week on Passions. I mean, every week is a bizarre week on Passions. But I will say that this week was particularly silly in especially with the Sheridan and Luis stuff. Like it was particularly silly. So we are gonna get started, but before we do, I have to say a quick shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you to Muna Shea, Marcus, Breland, Lisa, Sid, Sarana, Randall, Hannah, Camelia, Samantha, Jeanette, Eric, Fantasia, Sean, S, Larissa, Maria, Greg Lopez Fitzgerald, Lisa, Jessica Jean, Laura, Karen, and Uche. Thank you all so much for being patrons, supporting the show. We've been having a lot of fun doing the watch parties. We've been having a lot of fun just on the Discord. And so thank y'all for staying in community with me. And if you want to join the community, just go out to patreon.com/passionspodcast and sign up for whatever tier you find agreeable. This month, we are definitely going to do more watch parties. And I think I'm going to try, if I can't get it done this month in February, I'm going to try for March, but try and start a game night. We'll figure that out. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Anyway, now time for Passions. Let's start with the magic storyline, y'all. There's not a lot going on with the kids, really. We get a little bit of them at the top of the week. But it fizzles pretty quickly. So if y'all remember last week, Kay turned herself into a panther. Kay turned herself into the Black Panther, and she's running around town. And not only is Kay running around town as a panther, there's also an actual Black Panther that escaped from the zoo. So we've got two Black Panthers on the loose in harmony. So she's running around and she's trying to get back to her house because she's starting to turn back into a human. And so she's got human hands in a panther's body, and she's worried that if the kids get close enough to her, they'll see it and realize that she is the panther, and she is afraid of them exposing her, basically. But the kids and the zoo people have her cornered. And the zoo guys start to aim to shoot at her. Then Charity is like, something's wrong. I still sense evil. That's not a panther from the zoo. That's the evil creature. Like, I still sense that there's evil in that creature. Because remember, y'all, Charity had not really a premonition, a feeling that great evil was coming from the book of spells in the house. She didn't know anything about the book. I don't know. I'm just trying to recap to you the best I can. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense. Hopefully you listened last week so you understand what's going on. But yeah, Charity still senses evil. The kids have all decided they're gonna root out all the evil in harmony for some reason. I don't know. Don't ask me. So Miguel says, no, you're wrong. There's no evil out here to destroy us. Like, we were wrong. It's just a panther that escaped from the zoo that got into Tabitha's house somehow. Meanwhile, Tabitha and Timmy corner the real panther, and they think it's Kay, and thinks Tabitha keeps telling Timmy, "Oh, she's harmless. That's just Kay in a panther suit," and she's just dressed up like the Black Panther for Halloween. And so they're trying to leash the real panther. Meanwhile, it's growling at them. They do get it leashed. Timmy manages to leash it. And then it lays down, and they try to drag it away to try and get it home, and they can't get it home because it won't budge. And then they hear an announcement about the escaped panther from the zoo. and they realize, oh no, this is not at all Kay. This is a real panther, and they run away. Run away, run away. Um, they then stumble upon the kids who tell them about the panther that escaped from the zoo, but she then realizes, oh, this is Kay. This panther that they're with is Kay. So Kay has managed to get up on the roof. I don't know. She got on the roof somehow. Do you know?
I have no idea.
So she manages to get up on the roof, and she doesn't know what to do. She's like, if I jump off, they'll discover that part of me is human. But if I stay up here, the guys from the zoo are just going to shoot me. Well, that's exactly what they do. They shoot her. So Kay gets shot. Turns out, like last week, they didn't make it clear that they had tranquilizer darts. They were like, I feel like they said they were going to kill it. Maybe they just said shoot it on sight. Maybe that's what they said. And I just assumed because I'm an American that they meant kill it. So, so, um, they shoot Kay, but she's just been tranquilized. They go around the building to try and find her, but they take forever to go around the building. And in the meantime, Kay has fallen off the roof onto Tabitha, still in part panther, part human. Now her feet and her hands are human, hands and feet. Timmy and Tabitha get like stuck under her. They eventually manage to drag her home. The kids then come around and they see the panther again. They see the one that Tabitha had, and the zoo people shoot that one, and then they realize it only has one tranquilizer dart in it, and they're like, we're pretty sure we shot this panther 2 times. Where's the other dart? I mean, I feel like it's plausible that it could have fallen out when the panther fell off the roof, right? So Charity is still upset. She's like, there's another panther. We have to stop it or we'll regret it for the rest of our lives. I'm not entirely sure. Like, what does she think? What does she think the panther's going to do? It's got human hands and feet. I guess she keeps saying it's going to try and break. I don't know. She's like, it's evil. But Kay doesn't want to be in the panther body. It's not like she turned herself into a panther on purpose. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So why is Charity having these premonitions about like this evil beast? I guess because Kay's inside, but why wouldn't she just be having premonitions about Kay? You know? I mean, I guess she is. She's been having those ones where Kay and Miguel are having sex, but she never is like, Kay is evil. I don't know. Why can you sense the evil when she's in panther form? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, there's a bit of an inconsistency here.
Okay, so Charity is still upset. We have to catch the other panther. And she like leads the kids on another panther chase, basically. And Reese sees tracks in the, I don't know, just on the ground. He sees like some odd tracks and he's like, look at this, guys. It looks like there was an adult and a small child dragging something heavy. And he says, I bet it was Tabitha and her doll, Timmy, dragging the panther, the evil. So Charity says, Reese is right about one thing. Because Reese, of course, everybody's like, oh, yeah, we know. You think Tabitha's a witch. We don't believe that. Like, nobody's going for it. But Charity says, well, Reese is right about one thing. There is another panther, and it's trying to kill us, and we have to find it right now. No, it's not trying to kill them, though. Kay is not trying to kill them. So I don't understand what her vision is saying to her, where she's getting this information from. Is she just like making it up because she sees a panther and panthers are dangerous? And she just assumes because she's vain and thinks that everything's about her, that they're trying to kill her? Or is she getting a real, I don't know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't dwell on this too much because I know it's nonsensical. I know Passions is ridiculous. But it just doesn't make sense to me that she's talking about the panthers trying to kill them when all Kay wants to do is turn back into a human. She's not trying to kill anybody. She doesn't even want to kill Charity anymore. She just wants to separate her. She just wants to get pregnant by Miguel at this point. I know I'm a Kay apologist. Everybody knows at this point I'm kind of a Kay apologist. But she's not trying to kill anybody. She used to be. That's growth. She used to be trying to kill Charity and now she's not anymore. So
That's true.
I
Huge
don't know.
growth. But like you would think that she would be having premonitions of someone's in danger, someone needs help, instead of someone's gonna kill us.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's in danger. Seems like she would have a premonition of Kay turning into the Panther in the first place. Like, is why is Kay being shielded from the vision? I don't understand it. So anyway, Timmy and Tabitha managed to get Kay home, and she is basically mostly transformed back into a human, with the exception of a tail. She still has a tail. And Tabitha and Timmy managed to get her up on the couch. They hear the kids coming in. They're like, we have to do something to hide the tail. So they put her up on the couch, pretend like she's sleeping. They're like, the Reese comes in hot. He starts immediately accusing Tabitha, as he always does, of doing exactly what Tabitha has been doing. He's accusing Tabitha of doing exactly what she has been doing. He says all the things like, I bet you knew all about the Panther, and you and that doll decided to drag it back here, and where is the beast, but Tabitha manages to kind of weasel out of it like she always does. She feigns ignorance. What are you talking about? We were at a costume party, and I just got back, and it's just me and Kay here, and she's asleep on the couch. To which Jessica is like, she's sleeping? I can't believe this. We're all out fighting evil in the town, and she's catching up on some Z's, y'all. It just was so stupid. First of all, how was Kay supposed to know that y'all were trying to be out being like the mystery machine, trying to be Scooby Doo in the gang? First of all, second of all, y'all the ones that left Kay here after y'all saw a panther come down from exactly where she was, instead of going to check and see where she was and if she was okay.
True, they left her alone,
Yeah, they left her alone as far as
as far as they
they
know.
know.
Yeah.
As far as they know. So y'all the ones that left her here. How the hell was she supposed to know y'all are out fighting evil and fighting crime and the forces of evil? How was she supposed to know that? So anyway, Jessica tries to wake her up. She won't wake up because she's been tranquilized. Anyway, um, Reese is like, no, let her sleep. She's such a sweet angel, like whatever. And then Tabitha tries to shoo everybody away, like, all right, girls off to bed with you, boys go home. Um, and then Miguel asks Charity, do you still sense evil? And she says, oh my God, something's not right here, as she walks over to Kay, lifeless on the couch. Uh, but we get nothing from that after that, because then Tabitha and Timmy just go upstairs and decide that they want to rest and make Martinis. But immediately a scroll starts to float, and they do a whole like Sheridan and Luis. She tells the entire Titanic story, but through the lens of Sheridan and Luis and Brian. And we will talk about that more when we get to the Sheridan and Luis storyline, which y'all know I cannot stand right now. I am very much over it. I don't fucking care. I don't care. So once we get there, I'll do my best to pretend like I care. All right, moving on. Because do you have anything to add to the magic storyline?
I mean, there was just a few things like this this panther is going to haunt me in my nightmares. Like, I don't know, it must have been like puppetry. Like, how did they make this panther thing happen? And then with the hands and the feet, it was just so creepy. Like, it's totally going to be in my nightmares. Um, and like I took a couple notes. Like, Tabitha made a really outdated like OJ Simpson trial joke. I don't know if you caught that.
I don't think I
Like,
did.
even Johnny Cochran
Yeah.
himself couldn't convince a jury we aren't responsible if the kids find her and Timmy under the panther that's Kay. Um, and then at one point, I guess we're moving forward a little to when Timmy's looking at the scroll, but Timmy says, it's like the Larry Winger show. Timmy knows he shouldn't watch it, but he can't help it. And
Yeah.
that's their callback to the Jerry Springer show. And that's happened already. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they've had Jerry Springer guest star, and Eve and Julian and Whitney. Oh my gosh, that
Yeah.
was
It was a lot
that
of
was a
fun.
memorable one.
It was a lot of fun, yeah. All right. So, Ethan, Theresa, Julian. All of this stuff happening
Oh gosh.
at the hospital. We're at Hospital. Remember, Julian convinced Theresa to go into Ivy's cubicle and try and burn her hand with the lighter to try and get the marriage certificate out of her hand, which she was clutching with the strength of 1,000 gods. Apparently, they could not get it out of her hands, or Theresa couldn't get it out of her hands. Nobody else knew it was there. So she, to us, it looks like she lights the lighter and an explosion happens and this was all Julian's plan, right? To try and get rid of Theresa, Ivy, and Rebecca, because he sent Rebecca in there as well. And he sent her with, he revved her up first, lied and told her that he was married to Theresa and that Theresa had gotten him drunk and that she took advantage of him and she just wants to get her hands on the Crane fortune, and she won't give him a divorce until he signs over all of the Crane fortune to her. So he sent Rebecca in there trying to kill her too. Keep that in mind. I want everybody to remember he tried to kill Rebecca as well. So anyway, Theresa, well, let's pick up where we are now. Theresa, to us, to our eye, it seems like we don't see it happen, but it seems like she flicked it and an explosion happens. So that's where we pick up. The explosion happens, and Julian immediately starts to celebrate prematurely. He's like, that's great. I got rid of all of my problems.
Yes.
I've gotten rid of all my problems. They're all dead. And pretty quickly, we see that Theresa, Ivy, and Rebecca are all completely fine, unscathed, entirely unscathed. Rebecca wakes up and she starts immediately blaming Theresa, who she's talking to Gwen, because at this point it's kind of a mess. It's a little chaos, as you would think it would be in a hospital where an explosion just happened. It's very Grey's Anatomy, to be honest. Do you watch Grey's Anatomy?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I mean, this is actually similar to a plot that happened on Grey's Anatomy. I mean, there was an explosion. There's been a few explosions on Grey's Anatomy in that hospital.
They've had explosions on General Hospital, so
yeah. So it happens, I guess. No, God, I hope not. I've never heard of
I hope not,
a real
no.
Hospital explosion.
I'm
Anyway.
I'm not a scientist, but is oxygen even flammable?
Oh yeah, extremely flammable.
Okay.
Oh yeah. No, they got that part right.
Okay, well, I don't take Passion's word for anything. So
they got that part right. Because think about it. The atmosphere itself is only I think 20% oxygen. Most of our atmosphere is nitrogen, right?
Okay.
And so you can burn things, but the minute you start adding air to that, more oxygen to it, it gets bigger and bigger. That's why whenever you see buildings, especially older buildings, like mine has it, those fire doors, because if a draft comes through there, the whole place is gonna go. It's done. So yeah,
Wow.
so they have those big fire doors that you can pull to kind of section off a part of the building. So I mean, if you in there, shit out of luck, but that's what the fire escapes are for. But yes, oxygen is extremely flammable. Extremely flammable volatile substance. Okay, so the explosion happens. It's chaos in the emergency room. Everybody's looking for their loved one. Gwen finds Rebecca. Rebecca's fine. She wakes up and tells Gwen immediately Theresa is responsible for this. And not only that, but she married Julian, so she tells her all about that. They rejoice. They're like, Theresa's done. It's over for her. Then Theresa wakes up and she realizes that Ivy still has the marriage license and she needs to get it. And so when Ethan comes to check on her and his mom, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Theresa wakes up. She realizes she still needs to get the marriage license. That's where we are with her. Then Sam shows up. And instead of, because he was headed to the train station, which is a whole other thing that y'all should remember from last week if you listened. But he turned around because he heard there's an explosion at the hospital. So he shows up to investigate what happened, what caused the explosion. And he, Julian, is so dumb. He randomly and entirely without prompting decides to speak to the chief of police. Like, you just caused this thing, like, presumably you think you caused this thing to happen, and you think you did it because you're trying to murder 3 women, and you think you succeeded in murdering 3 women. Like, at this point, Julian doesn't know that everybody's still alive. And he says to Sam, "Oh, it's so tragic. Oh, so sad that Ivy, Theresa, and Rebecca are all dead from that explosion from the oxygen." To which Sam turns to him and says, "What makes you think they're dead? And also, what makes you think that oxygen caused the explosion? How do you know that?" Because Julian's the worst criminal. Julian is a bad criminal. He's so stupid.
He is, yeah, and like, before Sam gets there, we've got Julian. What's his lackey's name that he's there with? His lawyer?
Harper.
Harper, yes, okay. And Julian is like gloating, and Harper says, doesn't the fate of the 3 women in your life affect you at all? And Julian says, my days of having to sneak around to fill my biological needs are over. It was just so, I mean, Julian is so cartoonish, but only in a way that Ben Masters could ever do it.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's going to get reinstated as Crane Air by Alistair now. But my personal favorite was when he went over to the water cooler and he put a couple drops on his face so that he would look like he was emotional about his 3 wives, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Julian is, like you said, Ben Masters does it like nobody else could ever do it. And it's great. It's hilarious. It also makes you feel like icky. He's so good at playing this buffoon of a villain. But yeah, so Sam is like, "How do you know that the explosion was caused by oxygen?" And then of course Julian lies and he says, "Oh, I overheard some nurses talking." And sorry. Oh, and then Sam tells him, "Well, your tears are premature." His fake tears. "Your tears are premature because Rebecca and Theresa and Ivy are all fine." And then Harper reminds Julian about the lighter. He's like,
Yes,
what about
with
that?
his initials on it.
That lighter with your initials on it. That's going to be a dead giveaway that maybe you had something to do with this explosion, and you need to go find it before Chief Bennett does. So Julian immediately goes. He immediately finds the lighter. It's laying right there next to where Ivy was. But he picks it up. But a police officer sees him pick it up and is like, "What is this? What do you have? I want to show this to you. Just picked up evidence, basically."
Mhm.
And the police officer manages to get it from him, realizes that it's a lighter with his initials on it. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sure Chief Bennett will find this very, very interesting." And so meanwhile, while this is happening with Julian, Rebecca finally tells Gwen that Julian and Theresa are married. And Gwen, I want to talk about this really quickly. Gwen is really shocked at the story that Rebecca tells her, because Rebecca tells her what Julian told her, which is that Theresa got him drunk and took advantage of him and married him to get her hands on the Crane fortune. And Gwen, of all people, while she of course is overjoyed at the news, she also is like, that story doesn't sound correct. Mother, do you really believe that, knowing Julian, that Theresa was the one that got him drunk and took advantage of him? And I do want to give Gwen right now a little bit of props, and I want to be clear. I'm doing this right now because I already know that in a little while things are going to get very tense between me and the Gwen fans. I already know. And I want y'all to remember, I want y'all to savor this moment.
That one time Gwen was right.
Savor this moment when I give Gwen her props for at least being a thinking woman in this moment and saying, that doesn't seem correct. And really, because it doesn't. If anybody who knows Julian and would anybody who knows Julian knows that this is like his MO. He takes advantage of young girls. They all
Oh,
say it.
totally. Yeah.
They've all said it. So I do wanna say good on Gwen for not like necessarily believing the story, but I will say she is more than happy to go along with it because
Oh, yeah.
it does bring
Whatever's
about Teresa's
convenient.
downfall. Whatever
Yeah.
will bring about Teresa's downfall, which is fair enough. It's fair enough, all's fair in love and war, I guess.
It's too bad because Rebecca is usually so intuitive. She's figuring out she has an eye on Ivy and Sam and all this stuff. And but she's so off base here just listening to Julian and taking him at his word.
Well, and I think we talked about this last week. You are absolutely right. Rebecca is typically so intuitive. She picks up on things. She's usually the first one to kind of have an inkling that something is wrong. And she usually is right in a lot of her assumptions when she's putting the pieces together. However, this particular story that Julian has told her confirms all her biases against Teresa, right?
Absolutely.
So she already has certain biases that she feels about Teresa, and he's telling her a story purposefully, I might add. He told her all of these things knowing how she already felt about Teresa. So he's telling her a story to play into her clear hatred of Teresa already, and the way what she already believes about Teresa. She's been calling her a gold digging slut, right? She's been calling her that since she met her. So, and that she was a social climber, the housekeeper's daughter, So while sometimes logic is not strong enough to overcome bigotry. Oftentimes, logic
Oftentimes, yeah.
logic is not strong enough to overcome bigotry, and that's what's happening here with Rebecca, because she's not a dumb woman. She's a smart woman, and you can say that about a lot of people who are bigots. They're smart people, but their intelligence stops short at their biases, right? I don't know. Anyway, let me move on. Rebecca is a raging racist, and she's gonna believe the worst things she can about Teresa. So anyway, and she's a misogynist. She's a raging racist, and she's a raging misogynist. She hates Teresa. She hates women. She hates any person who is not a blue blood, a white blue blood.
Mhm.
She's horrible, but we still love her for the antics. So anyway, Rebecca and Gwen are overjoyed. They're like, "This is the end of Teresa. We finally done it." So Teresa comes in. She's very concerned and worried about Ethan and whether he's gonna notice that Ivy has that paper in her hand. And Ethan notices that she is like very upset and distraught and concerned. Also, I think she's concerned because, well, at first I thought she was concerned because she thought she made caused the explosion, but later we learned that she did not at all cause the explosion, and she knows she didn't cause the explosion. So, anyway, he notices that she's noticeably upset, which of course she would be.
She was in an explosion.
She just survived an explosion. Um, And he says, "Well, what's wrong, sweetie? You know you can tell me anything." And she goes, "And you'll still love me?" He says, "Of course, Teresa, I will always love you." And then he brings up, he's like, I know I made that promise to my mother that if you ever lied to me again, I'd break up with you. But I made that promise to her because I know you would never lie to me. Okay, Ethan. I want to say too, I might say a few little things here and there about Ethan this week that are not so nice, but I feel horrible for Ethan this week. I shed a tear or two for Ethan this week. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not gonna hold y'all. I actually got a little misty eyed. My nose started to tingle because they put him through the ringer. Oh, and he gives a really good performance. Travis.
We finally get to there's a bit more range.
Yeah, they give him something to do. They didn't, this week. I think we've talked about this before about how Travis and Natalie both And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, Travis is the guy who plays the first Ethan, and Natalie is the one who plays the current Gwen. And they don't like Passions. Like, they are not fans of the show. They kind of hated their time on the show. Travis especially has talked mad shit about the show and like how he really just hated his time on the show. But after watching like what he was able to do in these episodes, I was like, yeah, I think he probably was like a decent actor who felt like he wasn't getting anything to do except for the same dopey lines. He's doing the same dopey thing over and over again. I guess that would get to you because we are in episode 605 and he's just now getting to show some chops, you know? So I get it, I guess. His frustration with the show. All right, anyway, he says, I told you, I know you'll never lie to me. Then that's when Gwen and Rebecca find Theresa and Ethan. This was annoying because it seemed like Theresa was about to tell him the truth. Am I wrong in that assumption? Did it seem like she was about to tell him the truth? Everybody's telling her you need to tell him the truth, right?
Yeah, I got that vibe. Yeah.
So Rebecca and Gwen come into this and find Theresa and Ethan and Pilar, who's also there at this point. And of course they're very smug because they have this information on Theresa. And Rebecca says, I have something to tell you that's guaranteed to rock your world. And at this exact moment, Ethan hears Julian making a commotion with that officer who's trying to get the lighter from his hand. And so he's like, that sounds like Julian's voice. He better not be trying to hurt my mother. What makes you think he's trying to hurt your mother? He's yelling about police brutality. What makes you think he's trying to hurt your mother? But it doesn't matter. He runs off. And Theresa tries to go after him, but Gwen grabs her by the arms and is like, no, you don't, Theresa. You're done now. You're finished now. And Pilar steps in. Y'all, this was one of my favorite moments of the week. Pilar, and not because of Pilar, actually because of Rebecca. Pilar steps in, pulls Theresa away, says, get your hands off of my daughter, and they go to find Ethan, right? And then Gwen says to Rebecca, oh, Pilar won't be so quick to defend her daughter once she finds out what she's done. And Rebecca says, Gwen, honey, she already knows. Why do you think she's defending her so hard? And Gwen's like, what do you mean? Pilar wouldn't do that. She's not a liar. And Rebecca says, quote, Pilar is the one that raised Theresa to be the liar that she is. And I just want to say, this is the one and only time I feel in kinship with Rebecca. No, honestly, because last week, y'all, if you listened last week, you remember that I was kind of raging against Pilar last week. Like, and this was the sentiment. She's the one that raised Theresa to be the way Theresa is. To be honest, if we're being real, it's true. She is the one, and she's been holding secrets and keeping secrets, and she's shown Theresa how to keep a secret. Maybe she didn't say it explicitly, but see, the thing is, Pilar says one thing and she does another.
It's so true.
So Theresa has seen her mother doing, maybe not to the same extent that Theresa does it, but she knows her mama knows how to keep a secret. And her mom's going to keep this.
Reasons.
And the mother and Pilar's been keeping secrets for her for so long at this point. So long. It's like, you don't really care about honesty. You don't care about honesty. She doesn't care about honesty. She cares about protecting her neck and her kids. She wants to protect her kids. I want to be clear. Pilar does a lot of the lying that she does to protect her, to specifically Theresa, but to protect her children, which is fair enough, but it's still lying, and she's still being very judgmental about Theresa lying all the time. So, like Rebecca said, Pilar is the one that raised Theresa to be the liar that she is. It's the truth. It's the truth. Well, at this point, everybody convenes around the scene of the crime where there's like this commotion with Julian and the officer. And that's when Sam shows up. He takes the lighter and he's like, look at this lighter. It says JC. That means you, doesn't it, Julian? But then a nurse comes in and vouches for Julian because Julian's like, no, I wasn't anywhere near this scene of the crime when this happened. And a nurse comes in and says, yeah, that's true. I saw them over where I was when this all happened. And so Sam asks, well, if you weren't over here, how did the lighter get to the scene? And that's when Rebecca says, I know who flicked the lighter. It was Theresa Lopez Fitzgerald. And she says she tried to kill Ivy and she almost killed me to boot. She almost killed me to boot. Theresa at this point, oh my God. I know soap operas have to do this because they're just like constantly trying to bring everybody up to speed who have missed the show or missed the episodes and don't know what the fuck's going on. But it is at this point that Theresa pulls Julian to the side and starts talking to him. It's just so suspicious. And she's standing to him right next to him, doing that thing where she's talking but not looking at him. I don't know. It reminds me of when I was teaching full time and my kids used to have folders, and when they wanted to talk, they would, if you're watching, then I'm holding my paper up in front of my face. They would hold the folder up in front of their faces like this and turn their heads as if I didn't know they were talking. like I was supposed to be fooled by that. Like that was supposed to be. So that's how I feel about these scenes when these people, specifically like Theresa and Julian, are coming together in front of absolutely everybody in a situation where they're both being accused of something crazy and they're standing and talking to each other in the most conspicuous way possible, but thinking they're inconspicuous. It drives me nuts. I know it's like part of the soap opera shtick, but it drives me crazy. But that's what happens. She pulls him to the side and tells him, she never even used the lighter. She didn't flick the lighter at all. And she doesn't know what caused the blast because Rebecca came in before she ever got a chance to use the lighter. And then she puts two and two together and realizes, you knew what would happen when I flicked that lighter, didn't you? You wanted to kill me and Ivy. You tried to kill me. And they don't continue this conversation. I mean, why do it if you're not going to have Julian say something back? But, Sam calls everybody over. Are you there? Okay. It says your internet connection is unstable, so I don't know. Okay. Sam calls everybody over to the scene again and says, I know who caused the fire. It was Rebecca. I was like, Rebecca? I was like, that's a reach. And then Ethan's like, well, that makes sense. She does have motive because she wanted to stop my mother. She wanted to marry Julian, and my mother was contesting the divorce. So that's why she tried to kill my mother. And he says that Sam then says, no, Rebecca didn't do it on purpose. It was all of this metal she has on her outfit.
Any little bracelets.
Yeah, any little spark would have set off that explosion. What? That place is that much of a powder keg that you can't wear a couple of bangles inside? That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy talk.
Passions is like, we're all watching the same show. They reach all the time, but this one felt particularly insulting to the audience and to the characters too. It just, I don't know. It didn't make sense to me at all.
At all, because if you do have a room in your hospital like that where it's so oxygen rich that any little bitty tiny little spark will set off an explosion. Wouldn't you have it away from basically everything, in a basement?
Yes.
And also, wouldn't there be massive signs everywhere? Wouldn't it be hard to get inside of that room? Wouldn't you have to put a code in? Wouldn't there be some security checks? Something? No, there's just a curtain. There's just a curtain. It wasn't even a room. Door,
but a curtain. Yeah.
It wasn't even a room. It was just curtains around it. It was so stupid, y'all. I know I'm yelling, but I'm just That was so dumb. But anyway, we all take this as gospel. Rebecca set off the explosion with the metal, possibly the metal on her shirt, because she had on like this cute dress that had like this long chain across it, like a gold chain link, and it was pretty. And she had on like metal bracelets. She had on a bunch of metal. And Eve says it, not Eve, sorry. Sam says it was her, and she buys. Everybody buys it. I guess that's what the official explanation is going to be.
Yeah,
Um,
case closed. Another win for the Harmony PCPD.
Case closed. They still haven't found out who killed Crystal. Case closed.
Oh
Case
my God,
closed.
Crystal.
Oh, well, I guess this case is closed. It was Rebecca's bracelets. Um,
Sam says to Rebecca, "If I were you, I would find a new designer."
oh my gosh.
And Rebecca replies, "I never thought that one of my drop dead outfits would make me drop dead."
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. So it is at this point that Ivy wakes up on the other side of the emergency room, but we can all see her. She wakes up, she sits up in her bed, and she says, uh, she's ready to tell Ethan everything, and she yells, Rebecca's right. Theresa does have a reason to try to kill me. And that's when everybody goes over to her and is like, what are you talking about? And she says, Theresa's been lying to you the entire time. Theresa and Julian were married in Bermuda. Your fiance is Julian's wife. That was a great quote. Your fiance is Julian's wife. Ethan doesn't believe his mother at this point. It is a far-fetched thing to say. It is an outlandish thing to say. I just don't know why anybody would make that lie up. You see what I'm saying? I don't what
Yeah,
because it's
pretty,
verifiable. It's a
yeah,
verifiable fact.
especially for the lawyer that Ethan is.
Yeah. But he thinks that his mother, well, okay, he doesn't think that she made up a lie. He thinks that she got hit too hard on the head and he's
Okay,
like
fair.
he's like, "Oh, you must have hit your head really really hard. Let me go get a nurse for you." And as he's leaving, she's like, "No, Ethan, I'm not delusional. I have proof." And then she starts to have really really intense like pain in her back. And Ethan calls for Dr. Russell, and as Eve is coming to check on Ivy, Theresa cuts her off and begs her to move Ivy to another room so she can have the time to talk to Ethan alone. And Eve agrees, saying, "You need to tell Ethan the truth. You deserve the chance to tell him the truth yourself, because I do know that this information shouldn't come from somebody else." So she agrees, and she takes Ivy to another room. And when they're alone, oh my gosh, this was simultaneously funny and exhilarating. I like I love whenever Ivy and Eve get together. I really do. I still think they're best friends. I don't care. They're frenemies at best. I mean at most. I mean at least, sorry. They're frenemies at least. They, to me, would be such a good team in this town because they're villains. The problem is Eve won't just lean into the fact that she's a villain. She's a villain who
Right,
thinks she's a
yeah.
good guy, you know? And she is not a good guy. She's a villain. So
But at this point, they need each other.
they do. And so I enjoyed this. Eve is talking to Ivy, and she tries to convince Ivy that Julian is actually the one that took advantage of Theresa, not the other way around. And Ivy doesn't go for it, even though both of them talk about how horrible Julian is. And I will say that I think I've said this a few times at this point. Everybody talks about how horrible Julian is, but why are y'all so easy? Why is it so easy for you to believe that he got taken advantage of by a young girl? She's 18, 19.
Yeah, she's a teenage girl from the
I,
wrong side of the tracks, and he's a
yeah.
billionaire, whatever.
Ivy doesn't go for it. And the only reason she doesn't go for it is because she has this vendetta against Theresa. She wants to believe the worst of Theresa no matter what. It doesn't matter. Like I said before, the logic is overriding. I mean, the bigotry, and on Ivy's side, it's not as much bigotry as it is prejudice against Theresa as a person, like who she is. And so it's not really bigotry. It's like she just hates Theresa because of Theresa scanning that letter into her computer. That's it. She hates Theresa because of that. And because of that, she thinks that Theresa is capable of absolutely anything. But you lived with Julian for over 20 years. You raised kids with him. You know how fucking horrible he is. I don't know. I just feel
Also,
like,
she knows kind of what Eve went through as well, right? And
yes.
so this is somebody with like you both have lived experience here. Come on.
But she says no, Teresa's the real reason that oh yeah, she's like, Theresa ruined not only my life and Ethan's life, but have we all forgotten that she's the real reason that Grace lost her baby?
Oh
Oh
my
my
God, that
God.
was so out of left field.
Grace lost her baby. And then Eve takes her to task on this and says,
Yes.
no, none of that was Teresa's fault. That was your fault. Let's be clear. You told those lies. You kept that secret. And then Ivy turns it around on her and is like, oh, you want to talk about secrets, Eve? I'm not the only one with secrets here, Eve. Don't you forget. And Eve says to her, because she tries to diffuse it a little bit, because she realizes, listen, Ivy at this point doesn't have anything to lose, right? Her secrets have been exposed for the most part. Eve's still living high on the hog, right? She's still living her lie. So she does have to tread lightly when it comes to Ivy. So she starts to bring her tone down a bit with Ivy, and she says, I just want to give Theresa enough time to talk to Ethan and tell him the truth. I think she deserves the time to tell him the truth, and I think he deserves to hear it from her. Fair enough, Dr. Eve Russell. That sounds very reasonable. So she tells Ivy, so you're going to stay here until I talk to Theresa and make sure she's talked to Ethan. And Ivy starts to protest like, oh, but Eve. And Eve says, unless you want me to sedate you.
And you know that she will.
Y'all, I cracked up. I rewound it because it was so funny. Unless you want me to sedate you. Girl, you are a bad doctor. She's a terrible doctor. How the hell are you threatening your patients with sedation? I I don't. How are you threatening her with a sedative?
That's
Unless
Eve's
you
specialty, though.
unless you want me to knock you out and never wake you up again. I know how to do it. Don't try me, Ivy. I could put you in a coma.
Oh my God.
I could put you in an unexplainable coma, and when you wake up, you won't remember anything. So don't play with me. But then Eve gets a page. She does not sedate Ivy. I'm glad she didn't. I'm glad the way this happened. I was worried that this was gonna drag on for a few more weeks, and I'm so glad that it did not. So the Eve, she gets a page. She's like, I have to go, but I'm gonna come back and check on you. Well, of course, Ivy makes her escape. She finds a wheelchair and manages to get herself back over to where all the action is. And Theresa quickly tries to get Ethan to go somewhere with her so they can talk alone. Once Ivy's been taken away, Theresa's trying to get Ethan to go with her so she can talk to him alone. Theresa tries to get Ethan to go with her somewhere. Gwen and Rebecca stop them from going anywhere. And Rebecca says that Julian confessed everything to her. She says what Ivy says is true because Julian confessed everything to me and told me that he did marry Theresa in Bermuda. And that's when Julian is trying to escape and like slip out without anybody realizing he's trying to slip out. But Ethan sees him, yells at him, says, where you think you're going? Stop right there. Stop right now. Thank you very much. Need somebody with a human touch. That's my shit. But anyway, he says, stop right now. And he asked Julian if it's true. Julian is speechless. He has nothing to say. Because he's already told Rebecca he fucked himself. Congratulations, you played yourself. Congratulations, you played yourself. He could have managed to get Rebecca into that room without telling him on himself, but he didn't.
Exactly.
But he didn't. So he doesn't have anything to say. Ethan then turns to Theresa and says, why would Julian say something like that to Rebecca if it wasn't true? But before Theresa can answer Ethan, Ethan answers. Oh, yeah. Before Theresa can answer Julian, Ethan answers for her, saying that Julian said that just so he doesn't have to marry Rebecca. He's like, oh, I know why. I know why Julian would say that to you, Rebecca. He told you that because he doesn't want to marry you. Which, you know what? It's not Ethan's worst reach. It's really not. I wish he would have just let Theresa speak for herself, but he didn't. He did the thing he always does, which is ask a question and then answers it
Yep,
himself.
that's the men on Passions for you.
Yeah. He says, Rebecca, Julian was just saying that to you so he doesn't have to marry you because he never really wanted to marry you. And Rebecca starts to think, maybe Ethan's right. Like, that makes sense. It does make sense that he would tell her that lie, even though they did just have a whole ass wedding. Like, he was going to go through with it. But I guess maybe this was his way of trying to get out. They could see that it was his way of trying to get out of it. I could see that. And then Rebecca tells Ethan the whole Julian's version of the story and says, that Theresa got him drunk, that he didn't know what was going on. She took advantage of him. And Ethan says, this is an absurd story. Correct? I'm glad he's like, this is absurd. It's not even a possibility. The only thing that man has ever done with his life is take advantage of women. And the younger, the better. So, You're telling me that a young girl from Harmony seduced Julian Crane, one of the most powerful men in the world? Yes, I love this. I loved this thinking, Ethan. I loved it. And Rebecca and Gwen both are like, yeah, no, that when you put it like that, you make some good points, Ethan. Well, Ivy comes in. I almost thought Theresa was getting away with it. I really did. I almost thought that she had a little bit more time to breathe and would have some time to have a conversation with Ethan, but they didn't let up on Theresa this week. They did not let up on her this week.
They did not.
So that's when Ivy comes rolling in her wheelchair, and she comes in with the proof. She hands it to Ethan, says, Ethan, look at this. And he looks at it and he says, you're really married to Julian. And Theresa does her little thing. And he's like, I can tell by looking in your face that it's true. You're married to Julian. You lied to me, Theresa. You lied to me again. And he then goes after Julian and starts to attack Julian because Julian's trying to sneak away. And he pulls Julian down to the ground, starts choking the life out of him. After, I should add, Ivy was egging Ethan on during this whole thing. When he turned to look at Julian, he turned his ire towards Julian, and it was like, where do you think you're going, Julian? Ivy was yelling about how Theresa had lied to him. She just saying a lot of really horrible things that would only make him angrier. And then that's when Ethan attacks Julian, and he's beating the shit out of Julian. And Ivy seems pleased. She smiles. And at first I was like, girl, that's your son and he's about to murder a man. You think that he's about to murder your husband, and then he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail for murder, or at least 15 to 20 for manslaughter, or second degree murder. This is a crime of passion, but he would still go to jail. There's just no getting around. You kill somebody, you're going to jail, period. And that's when Theresa's screaming, no, Ethan, stop, you'll go to jail for murder. And that's when it clicks.
It clicks with Ivy.
For Ivy, oh my God, yeah, no, Ethan, stop. It's like, bitch, you did this. Yes. You did this. You created this powder keg. You created this moment. She created this moment from beginning to this moment. Ivy, y'all know I love Ivy. I really do. As far as her character goes, I think she's really dynamic. I think she's a smart lady. I think she's fabulous. There's a lot of things I like about Ivy. One thing I hate about Ivy though is how she passes the buck when it comes to accountability, when it comes to her part in everything. She doesn't truly believe that she has done anything wrong. She doesn't. She doesn't. I'm sorry. I don't. Y'all can defend Ivy till the cows come home. I'm not gonna believe that she thinks that she did anything wrong. She doesn't. That's why she's so mad at Theresa. She wouldn't be so mad at Theresa if she didn't feel like she was completely innocent. She feels like she's completely innocent in all of it. She's like, I had my reasons. I did what I did for my son. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Because and you know what? Let's keep going because Ethan says some things this week that I 100% agree with. So, and they harken back to what I just talked about. So, Sam comes in, pulls Ethan off of Julian, and he's being held back by Theresa and like a couple other people, I think, maybe Pilar. And Theresa tries to explain to Ethan, saying, "I can explain everything," and he yells at her, "Explain what? Why? Explain why you married Julian." And she does try to start to explain, but Ivy and Rebecca both team up to give their versions of why Theresa married Julian, which is the gold digger angle, right? Your marriage to her had fallen through, so she decided to go marry Julian instead, which doesn't make sense. Okay, fine.
Not at all.
It doesn't make sense.
There's no plausible scenario where Theresa is the predator in this case.
If she had married Julian and that was like her whole thing, like, oh, I'm my marriage to Ethan has fallen through, so I'm gonna marry Julian instead, wouldn't she have come back triumphant? Wouldn't she have been like, yeah, I got what I wanted?
Yes.
I'm Mrs. Julian Crane. Wouldn't she have just leaned in to the money and the power? She didn't do that at all. So it just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, because like, do they think that she thought she was going to continue this ruse with Ethan? No, it doesn't make any sense. But so she says, I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to help. All I wanted to do was help. And he says, by lying to me over and over. And she says, I didn't. Yeah, very fair. Extremely fair. Yes. I want to say Ethan's reactions this week were spot on. They were exactly right. They were correct. And I loved it. I loved it for him. I loved it for the actor. I loved it for Passions. I loved it for me. I was happy to see Ethan get a rare moment of true honesty, vulnerability, and just humanness. Like, he seems like a real human person versus this dope who's just so in love.
One-dimensional.
Yeah. So yes. Okay. So he says you were trying to help me by lying to me over and over again. And she says, I didn't mean to. Everything just got so complicated and I didn't know how to undo the things. And he says, and telling the truth never occurred to you? Like, right. Yes, right. Telling the truth. And of course it did. Of course it occurred to her because multiple people were telling her. Whitney and Pilar were telling her over and over again, you should tell them the truth. You should tell them the truth. Until Whitney started telling them the lie. That started happening. And Whitney comes in later in this. And this was another moment where I was like, why the fuck isn't Whitney here? Whitney should be here in these moments because she can vouch for Theresa. She was there. She knows exactly what happened. Well, she wasn't there when all the things went down, but she knew before anybody else. And Theresa told her everything that had happened. She can explain what was going on when they were on the island. But I guess she wasn't there for the story, and so they could bring her up to speed later. And so she could say, I told you so, which she does say later on.
Whitney never misses a chance to say I told you so to Theresa.
She literally says,
you know what? Fair enough, Whitney.
Fair enough. She literally says, I hate to say I told you so, but it's like, well, then don't say it. Anyway, he says, did you ever once tell me the truth? This is when Pilar steps in saying Theresa has done some terrible things. We will admit she's done some terrible things. She's made mistakes. But everything she did was out of love for you, Ethan. Don't you see? She lied to you for your own good. Don't you understand? Like, it's just to protect you. I mean, I didn't love it. But this is what Pilar, this is her defense of her daughter. And then she tells him, listen, Julian took advantage of my daughter. He got her drunk. And then Ethan says, why should I believe either of you? Yes, this was great. He says, why should I believe either of you? Pilar, you lied to me too. You knew I
Yeah,
wasn't a crane
my
and you
whole
kept
life.
it from me. And I thought of you as a second mother. And then he says, speaking of mothers, turns around, looks at Ivy and says, and you, mother, you've lied to me my whole life. You told me I was a crane when I wasn't. You let me go on thinking that wretch of a man like Julian, that a wretch of a man like Julian was my father when it was Sam Bennett, a fine and decent man.
Yes.
Which this was the moment when I told y'all I got a little teary eyed. I got a little teary eyed because when he said, I grew up with a wretch of a father like Julian when I could have had a fine and decent father like Sam. And Sam standing back there just gobsmacked, like he's just like shook at what Ethan is saying, shocked at him, such nice things he has to say about Sam. Because remember, not too long ago, he hated Sam's guts.
Yeah,
It's
they
like, I'm
had
going
a
to get you
little rivalry
fired.
going on. Like Ethan was gonna get him fired, I think, at one point as
Mm-hmm.
chief of police. Yeah. And I think it's too bad too, because I think early on in the show we kind of saw Ethan like battling with his inner demons, like, am I like Julian? Am I like my father? And so to realize all this time later that this person you were so worried about, turning out to be like, that's not who you are at all.
Yeah. And in a way, it was bittersweet for me as a viewer because I want him and Sam to have a nice father son relationship. I want Ethan to get to know his father. I love
Yeah,
those moments.
salvage that time. Yeah.
I love the moments when they are talking to each other and just having like very nice, wholesome father son, moments. Being so, Sam being supportive of Ethan, just being there for him. I really like those moments, and it made me sad because I could hear the pain like from Ethan. I had to grow up with this jackass as my father when I could have had.
Yeah.
Sam could have been my dad,
Yeah.
and that would have been awesome. It's like he doesn't even care about the money. He really just wanted to have a good dad, and anyway, he says lies. My whole life has been about lies. Well, all of you liars can go straight to hell. All of you liars can go straight to hell. I'm out. And he leaves saying, I've got to get out of here because if I don't know what I'll do. Theresa is destroyed. Destroyed. Sobbing, screaming, punching the air, just really upset. And she tries to go after him, but Pilar holds her back and says, not right now. And I agree with Pilar. No, girl, not
Me
now.
too. Yeah.
Let him have some space. Let him have his time and some space. At this point, Theresa goes to the chapel. She prays for God to protect Ethan, and she swears to God that she will do anything God asks of her if only God helps Ethan get through this terrible thing that she has done to him. And she says, even if it means he'll never look at me or speak to me again, please help him. And that's when Whitney shows up, wondering. I was wondering where she was, myself, but she finally shows up because Pilar called her. Pilar called her, but didn't tell her why Theresa needed a friend. She's like, "Yeah, your mom called me, and she just told me you might need a friend right now." So of course, Theresa brings her up to speed on everything that happened, and then we get this little caveat. This is the only thing that was important about this conversation, really. Whitney asks Theresa if Ethan knows that she and Julian slept together. So we are now splitting this one big secret up into two secrets. So now half of the secret has come out, but the other half has not. I hate this. I'm sorry, I hate it. I wish they would have just went with the assumption that they slept together after they got married. I do.
Yeah, I know what you mean, especially because we all know Julian's sleazy. We know that he got her drunk. I don't know why it's so far-fetched for everyone to believe that she was manipulated into this entire situation.
Yeah, I don't like this at all because also at this point, Theresa tells her no, he doesn't know that I slept with Julian. And then Whitney says, "Well, we have to make sure that he never finds out." Girl, haven't y'all kept enough secrets? Haven't y'all kept enough
Yeah,
secrets and told enough lies? And Whitney, that coming from Whitney of all people.
it's true. It just was not consistent with who Whitney has been for 600 episodes.
And at this point, this is kind of the worst it can get. Go on and just get it all out of the way.
Yes. What do you have to lose at this point?
Go ahead
It's
and get it all
over.
out of the way. Because here's the thing. Either he believes you and believes that you were taken advantage of, or he doesn't. And if he doesn't believe that you were taken advantage of and Julian got you drunk, then it doesn't matter, and none of it matters, right? So just tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God, and get it all out there, because you don't want to be with a man who won't believe you when you say I was assaulted.
Yes.
Right? You don't want to be with a man who so just tell the whole truth, and if he believes it, great, we're going to move on, we're going to work through this, maybe get some therapy, some counseling. If he doesn't, nice knowing you. Nice fucking knowing you. Like, I'm moving on with my life. I went through this horrible. That's the thing too. Theresa went through a horrible, terrible situation. I want us never to forget how fucking heinous those episodes were. And I remember, and this didn't happen that long ago. I remember watching them, and I was so uncomfortable. I was sick to my stomach. It was hard to watch. She's gone through a traumatic experience. And I don't think she's getting enough grace from the writers about that.
Not at all.
I
Not at
don't.
all.
I don't. Now she's the perpetrator. She's doing this to Ethan. Something bad happened to her, and she tried to keep it to herself. She wanted to keep it to herself. I don't think I understand that she should not have necessarily lied about everything. And maybe
Hmm.
it wasn't the best thing to keep to herself, but Theresa is a victim, and
Yes.
victims
How victims cope, it looks different every time.
and victims keep things to themselves for long, long periods of time.
You're right. Yeah.
That it is not uncommon, and it's I'm sure she had a lot of shame around that whole
Shame,
thing.
yes.
It's not that crazy to think that she would want to cover it up. It's not that horrible of a thing for her to do. I'm sorry. I know y'all think I'm a Theresa apologist, and I'm just I just hate Gwen for no reason, but I sincerely in this moment with Theresa, and that Theresa's like the worst. Everybody hates Theresa. Well, some people hate Theresa, and the reason they hate Theresa is because she lies and she's manipulative and she's this and that. In this moment, though, I didn't feel like I don't think they've given her enough space and grace in her victimhood,
No,
and it's
I'm
not
with you,
fair.
LeTara. Yeah, and like, come on, we're talking about the housekeeper's daughter and this billionaire, famous man, and like, I would be scared. I would be petrified of like, if I do own my truth and speak my story, what are the Cranes gonna do to me?
That could definitely be part of it too. Yeah, like there's again, they don't write it that way. And
No.
maybe I just added my own little 2023, 2024 perspective into it. But that's what this podcast is about too. We're looking at passions through a modern lens or whatever, a current lens, and seeing all the problems that arise. And this is one of the problems that has arisen for me. But I'm gonna move on. They're saying they've decided that they are gonna lie to Ethan some more. Should the opportunity arise, Teresa's gonna lie again about whether she had sex with Julian or not. And remember, she doesn't even remember having sex with Julian. She doesn't even remember doing it. So I don't know. Is it even a lie? For me, if I were her, I would tell, the situation presented itself, I would tell Ethan, here's the thing. I was very, very drunk and I don't remember having sex with Julian. However, Julian says we did, but I don't know I don't know how true it is. I don't know. I'm very inexperienced. She had only ever had sex one time with Ethan. She doesn't know what her body would necessarily feel like the next day. So yeah, I feel like this was such an easy thing to get out of. Oh, I hate that this happened. This was such an easy thing for Theresa to get out of if she had just said what needed to be said when it needed to be said. And again, we don't write enough. They don't write enough of her victimhood into this. So we spend a lot of time blaming her. And I'm guilty. I'm guilty because I can only go with what the show has given me. You know, I can only put so much of myself into it before I've created a completely different narrative.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Ethan is wandering around town. He reminisces about all the good times with Theresa. It's very sweet. We got a cute little montage that I fast forwarded through. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not gonna hold y'all. And then he thinks about, all the things that just happened. And then Theresa and Whitney go back to Theresa's house. Theresa said something about like, Ethan's probably never going to want to see me again. I don't think I'll ever see him again. They go in the house and there he is. Cause I was thinking, doesn't Ethan live at Theresa's house? Like, where the fuck is he going to sleep? He's homeless.
Oh, that's right. Cause he's not a crane anymore. Yeah. Oh no.
He's homeless.
Oh my God.
This man is going through the ringer. I feel so bad for him. But yeah, they open the door and there he stands. And that's where we ended with them this week. Like we don't know. But I imagine, I already know that where we're headed is Theresa's about to keep the next secret, which is that she had sex with Julian. And then the next secret is that she's pregnant. And then the next secret is that little Ethan is actually Ethan's baby. It's like, but she thinks it's Julian's. I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to that storyline, honestly, because I don't remember it that well. I really don't remember the little Ethan. Like, when I remember she got pregnant and she thought the baby was Julian's. I'm pretty sure, right?
Right away, yeah.
Immediately, she thinks it's Julian's because she had taken her very first birth control pill the first time she had sex with Ethan.
That's right, yes.
She had taken one singular birth control pill. The show. Anyway, but you know what? That's how teenage girls think. If they haven't been taught, if you grow up Catholic and abstinence only sex education, and somebody tells you this is a birth control pill, it'll keep you from getting pregnant. You don't know that you have to take it for at least a month before it's actually effective.
Gotcha.
But anyway, let's move on. You got anything to add to Theresa, Ethan, Julian, all of that jazz?
No, that's great. I think we talked about it for an hour, so
I can't help myself.
I didn't know there was an hour of material there, but we made it work.
I had 3 pages of notes.
No, I had a full page on Microsoft on Google Docs just of the hospital.
Yeah. All right, so now we're gonna move on to David, and I did it again. David at the beginning. No, we want Sam and Grace plus David. So let's talk about this. Honestly, I can probably blast through this pretty quickly because there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of the same dialogue happening over and over and over again. So, let's pick up at the train station. Grace is at the train station waiting on Sam, her husband. David is hanging around even though he allegedly had a flight to catch.
Yeah, he has some photo shoot assignment.
It's not real. He made it up. He doesn't really have a photo shoot assignment. Gotcha. Yeah, he made it up, trying to in an attempt to force Grace to cancel her trip with Sam. He basically created this false sense of urgency around him being able to tell her about her past. Here's the thing, though. He says, tonight's the night. We can go out to dinner. I can tell you all about your past, all the things you always want to know about your past. But we have to do it tonight because I have to go. I have to go to this photo shoot, and I don't know when I'll ever come back. It's now or never, basically. And then he proceeds to spend the entire night with her, and talks about Sam and Ivy. What? You had the time to spend. You had the opportunity to spend the entire night with Grace, regardless of the fact that Sam was supposed to be there. Yes, I get that, and that he wanted to make it clear that he feels that Sam doesn't really care about Grace. He really cares more about Ivy. Fine, whatever. However, you had the entire night to tell her about her past, and it didn't come up one time. Not one time. Not once. So what is coming up at the train station is David keeps telling Grace, oh, Sam's at the hospital with Ivy because he cares more about Ivy than he does about you. And he's so selfish because he's standing you up to be with another woman. And then meanwhile, Sam is like on his way to the train station. He has his sirens on.
He has the sirens going.
Yeah, because he's a bad cop. He's a crooked cop.
I was like, what are you doing?
He's a crooked cop. He can do what he wants to do. I am the police. I am the law. Who's gonna check me, boo? Nobody. Nobody's gonna check him.
Sheree.
Yeah, who's gonna check me, boo? So, yeah, David's like, oh yeah, he's more concerned with Ivy. Grace is like, no, maybe he's hurt. Maybe something happened. Something must have happened. He'll be here. He might be in danger. David says no, he just cares about Ivy. He's just standing you up. He doesn't care about you. And he's like, I'll take you home. You're going to miss your train anyway. I'll take you home. She says, no, I can't leave the station because if Sam shows up, he'll be worried because I'm not here. Well, girl, he already done stood you up. I mean, I think he would go to the next logical place. I don't think he would be that worried. I think he would just go to the next logical place, which is wherever you sleep. He would go home, go to Tabitha's house where y'all are living currently. But she, at that point, tries to call Sam, but he doesn't answer. And David says, oh, he's just too wrapped up with Ivy right now to answer your phone calls. Sam's phone is like in his car. It happens. Meanwhile, Sam is racing to the train station when the call comes over the radio that there's been an explosion at the hospital, and the explosion happened in the emergency room. Now, he does immediately go, Ivy, because his mind immediately goes to Ivy because she's in the emergency room.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind for a subsequent conversation that is had later. But he turns around, goes back to the hospital, of course, because it's his job to do that. There's an explosion at the hospital. He's a first responder. He has to go back. Now, why he didn't call Grace, I will never know or understand. I don't know, but he didn't. He goes right back to the hospital. And then we get all the things that he did at the hospital with Theresa and Ivy and all of that. Meanwhile, David decides to take Grace to the hospital to show her. When we get there, he's going to be with Ivy. And he wants to prove that Sam is with Ivy and he doesn't care about Grace. And when they get there, they learn that there was an explosion at the hospital. And Sam says, see, I told you. I told you it had to be something. This explains why he didn't make it to the station. But then when she does see Sam, he is, in fact, with Ivy. So Sam sees Grace and he notices that she's upset. So he goes to talk to her. Because at this point, Sam was leaning over Ivy because she was trying to tell him something. She was like, I can't remember what she was saying. I think it was like, Theresa, Julian.
Oh, yes. Theresa, Julian.
Yeah.
Married.
Yeah.
Bermuda.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's like leaned over her and it looks from the outside, it looks like he's like caressing her or something. You can't really see what he's doing with his hands. Fine. He realizes Grace is standing there and he goes to tell her and explain to her, it's not what you think. I was just trying to hear what Ivy was saying. She's weak and she's trying to say something to me, and the explosion happened in her cubicle. That was another thing that they didn't know, and he told them. The explosion actually happened in her cubicle. And so of course Grace is like, oh, that makes perfect sense. David's not buying it. David's like, no, you were here with Ivy. Why didn't you come to the station? If it were me, I would have let some other cops handle it. And it seems like I'm the chief of police.
Yeah, there's no other cops to hand this off to, right?
Like I'm the chief of police. How would I not come to the scene of a major crime in this tiny town?
Explosion.
Yeah, in this tiny town. It's not like he's the chief of police in New York City where there's all kinds of disasters all over the place.
Sure.
It's Harmony, USA. And there's like 6 cops total. And most of them, and one of them's in Bermuda. Luis isn't even here. They're short-staffed. They're short-staffed.
Yep.
Like, who am I supposed to pass this off to? Anyway, so David is being hella annoying. He says, Grace gave up the chance to go to dinner with me to learn about her past, except you've been with her all night and you haven't said a fucking thing about her past to her. All you can talk about is Ivy. Both of you motherfuckers are obsessed with Ivy. If from my perspective, if I'm Grace, it's like, if Sam's obsessed with Ivy, so are you, David, because that's all he fucking talks about.
Yeah.
All he talks about is Ivy and Sam and how much Sam loves Ivy. It's like, oh, I don't know. I just would be more suspicious if I were Grace. She finally kind of gets there a little bit later. So it is at this point that Sam accuses David of spying on them. He's like, it's odd to me that you had such perfect timing to come in and ruin my trip with my wife. And the timing just seems very suspicious, and that you wanted to have dinner with Grace on this day of all days, and this was the only day you could do it. Just as we were about to go on a trip. David's like, don't change the subject. And these two just bicker back and forth about Ivy. They fight about, like, imagine being Sam's wife. Or, you know what, both of these, she is both of their wives, right? She is Sam's wife. She's David's wife. They both claim to love her so much, but they're constantly fighting over Ivy. Like, why
Grace can't catch a break. No.
Why are y'all arguing over Ivy? They're bickering back and forth. David's like, you care more about Ivy than you do about Grace. Sam's like, you're just trying to undermine my marriage, and you don't really care about Grace, which is true. I'm glad they're finally making that connection. Sam says it at least 2 times. Like, it seems to me, you say you love Grace, but it seems to me all you want to do is make her unhappy and undermine her marriage. So then Sam gets called away, and after he explains what happened, and Grace says, I understand. I knew there had to be a good reason, a good explanation. And Sam gets called away to, like, do police work. And David then tells Grace that you don't believe what Sam says. You need to believe your eyes. You know what you saw. Believe yourself. She can't even remember this lady cannot remember what high school she went to. Believe herself. Believe her eyes. This lady, I mean, I don't know. That's not fair. I know that's not fair, but she can't remember the first 20 years of her life. I don't know how, like, I just don't know how reliable her brain stem is. I don't
Sure. Like, what's your gut instinct when you don't have half of your life?
Yeah, like, what do you know? I don't know. So many of your experiences are lost, and so much of how we make decisions is based on our experiences, So I feel like maybe that explains why Grace does make poor decisions. She forgot how to make good decisions when she lost her memory. That's one of the things that went in with the amnesia. So anyway, he's telling her, no, you know what you saw, don't believe, and he's getting more and more agitated. He's getting more and more worked up as he talks to Grace. And he's just trying to plant more and more seeds of doubt in Grace's mind. And um and which is what Sam had accused him of doing, honestly. Um Oh no. So yes, Sam. So he's doing these things. He's talking at Grace, telling her, "Believe what you saw. You're a smart woman. Sam only cares about Ivy. Ivy's his only priority. He like, do you really think he came here because he was worried about Ethan? Like, Ethan's a grown man. He doesn't need his daddy to help him. First of all, leave Ethan out of it. First of all, because Ethan, yes, he's a grown man, but he just met his father. So to say like he doesn't need his daddy is like, well, maybe he does. He never knew a supportive father. And now he's finally getting a supportive father. So shut up. Oh, I hate David. I hate David so much. Anyway, Sam is overhearing all of this. And he hears David just planting all of these seeds of doubt in Grace's mind. And when he comes out, he accuses David of doing just that. He's like, you're trying to undermine my marriage. He says to Grace, does this sound like a man that loves you, who only wants to make you happy? He's trying to undermine your marriage. He's trying to make you miserable. He's saying all of these things that simply are hurtful, which is what I've been saying for weeks. I've been saying that for weeks. This man is constantly just digging in at Grace, just digging in, beating her down, tearing her down. He's nasty work. He's a nasty, nasty man. And so then David kind of tries to turn it around on Sam and questions who Sam was more worried about when he heard about the explosion. Was it Ivy or was it Ethan? And Grace says, you know what? I can tell just by the expression on your face, Sam, that I know exactly who you were thinking about and why when you heard about the explosion. She says, I know you were thinking about Ivy and I know why. It's because you knew that she was in the emergency room. It's not because you love her. Great. That's wonderful. Sam and David continue going back and forth. I don't care. They say the same fucking shit for 3 episodes.
No, I feel the same way. I'm not invested in the story right now.
You love Ivy. No, I don't. Yes, you do. Ethan didn't need his daddy. Da da da. Like, he's a grown man. Who cares? Eventually, Grace steps in, tells them to stop. This isn't making anything better. She says she's ready to go back to Tabitha's house. She says this to Sam. Sam says to her, well, I really need to stay here and do, I still have some things to wrap up here. If I were Sam, I would, and if I really, really cared about Grace, like for real, and was like, I don't want this man around my wife, I would not let her leave my side. I'd be like, I know you want to go back to Tabitha's house, but I only have 45 more minutes here. Yeah. Can you just like shadow me, hang out with me while, I just want you by my side while I do this, and then we can go home together. That's exactly what I would have done. And I think Grace definitely would have gone for it. But that's not what Sam does because he's an idiot. He says, no, I have some work to do here. You go on home. I'll meet you at home later. David says, I'll take you home. Sam says, over my dead body. Well, is Sam dead? Because David takes Grace home. That's exactly what happens. They go back to Tabitha's house and David continues digging in with Grace. He's just saying the same shit. He's very annoying. Goes on and on about Sam loving Ivy. And Grace finally stops him and says, you don't actually want what's best for me, do you? You're just trying to undermine my marriage. Yes, thank you. You're just trying to undermine my relationship with Sam. He starts to, and this is when he starts to backtrack because this is the first time Grace is giving him any real pushback that is rooted in the truth. Like that she's picking up on something's not right here. And so he starts to kind of backtrack. He's like, no, I think Sam's a wonderful guy. I think he's great. I don't think he's a bad person. I just think he's confused and he still loves Ivy. I do think he maybe loves you, but he's confused and he still loves Ivy. And this is when he's like, well, I guess I'll go now. Cause she does this thing that I love. I will say I've done this in the past when I'm done talking with somebody, when I'm done with a conversation. Well, I'll see you later. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm finished talking to you. I'll see you later. And then I don't move. I don't go anywhere. Just
Oh God.
like, and the thing is, this they're at not Grace's house, but where Grace is staying, right?
Yes.
So of course he would be the one leaving. So she tells him as much. She's like, "Well, take care of yourself. I know you've got a flight to catch. Take care of yourself." He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess I'll be going now." And David tells her before he leaves, he's like, I never meant to add extra stress to your life. Had I known you had amnesia, I never would have come to Harmony. What? Huh? What do you mean you never would have come to Harmony had you known she had amnesia? This is the woman you say you love and were married to. Regardless of the situation, you would show up, right?
Yes.
Am I crazy to think
you were
that?
the only key to her past.
Am I crazy to think that? That
No, I'm with you.
regardless of whether you knew she had amnesia or not, whether you knew if she had a husband or not, you would show up and like put eyes on her and be like, "I've been looking for you for 20 years. I'm so glad you're
Yes, like I
fine.
thought
I'm
you
so
were
like
dead. I never thought I'd see you again.
I'm just so happy
Whatever.
to see you, regardless of if you remember me or not." Like
Yes.
I would be overjoyed, I feel like. But he's like, I never would have even come if I knew you had amnesia and were already married and had another life. Do you love her? No. These are not things that a person in love says to another person. So Grace says, "You know what? I think I need to go back to the hospital. I need to go back and be with Sam." Why did you leave in the first place? Why did she leave in the first place? They just literally just turn around and go back to the hospital. She says, "So I'm sorry, I can't see you off at the airport." So just as Sam is finally about to leave the hospital to go home to Grace, Pilar stops him and says, "You have to come and get Ethan. He's about to murder Julian." So he's about to leave. This is when all the like Julian murder stuff starts, and he pulls Ethan off and all of that. After the whole Theresa, Ethan, Julian debacle, Grace shows back up at the hospital, and once again, she finds Sam with Ivy. And again, it's after all of this huge thing has blown up. And this time Grace is not too happy about it. Like to see Sam standing with Ivy, and he's comforting her at this point because again, Ethan went the fuck off on Ivy for good reason. She deserved it, to be frank. But once Sam explains the whole situation, Grace understands. But Ivy's like, oh, she's playing like the innocent act. Is great. She's playing the innocent act. She's like, oh, I'm so glad you're so understanding, Grace. I see why Sam loves you. Of course, I could never come in between your marriage. And I want you to know this is really just about Ethan. I just want Sam to be there for his son. Ethan needs both of us right now. Grace is not buying it. She's like, listen, I think that Sam and Ethan definitely need and deserve to have a relationship with each other, but I don't believe for one fucking second, bitch, that you are not going to try and use this to your advantage to try and break up my marriage. Mm-hmm. Don't get it fucking twisted, bitch. I like this Grace. I like this
Me
Grace.
too.
I like this Grace.
We don't see enough of Grace, like critical thinking, having a backbone, putting people in their place, telling them where to go and how to get there.
Grace says, "I think you're capable of absolutely anything."
Yes.
So I wouldn't put it past you to use this situation where your son is in pain to your advantage. Ivy again just continues to play innocent. Oh, plays up the wounded bird, right? Like, yes. Oh, I know I've done some bad things in the past, but I know I'm seriously, I understand that the two of you are, you love each other, and there's no breaking you up. I know there's no coming in between you. She says, I'm not up to my old tricks, I promise. Now, she's not up to no old tricks. She's up to some new tricks.
That's right.
And meanwhile, at the book cafe, I just want to very quickly say, Hank has a conversation with David. He finds David at the book cafe of all places, considering this man said he had a flight to catch. Why aren't you on your flight? Why aren't you at the airport? Lying ass. So Hank questions David about his story, right? And he's like, I have a question to ask you. Grace was admitted to the hospital under her first name, Grace, and then they they named her Grace Doe in Boston Hospital for quite a while. If you knew Grace had gone to Boston, why didn't you find her? Surely the hospital would have been one of the first places you would look for her. Thank you. Ding 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 ding. Yes, thank you,
I
Hank.
know it's Hank that is the voice of reason right now. That says something.
And then David says, well, Grace disappeared when I was out of the country on a photo shoot. That's not the story he told before. I just want to make that clear. That is not the story he told before. But he says she disappeared while he was out of the country on a photo shoot. And when he got back, he searched for her everywhere to find her, but he couldn't find her. And Hank says, so nobody had any record of her? And David says, no, they didn't. Maybe she had been released. There would still be a record of her. And there would be a police report. Why wouldn't you have gone to the police being like, I'm looking for my wife, Grace. She disappeared. Anyway, he didn't. Hank says, you're trying to turn this whole thing around and try and point the finger at Sam because David's like, the real question is, how did Sam manage to get her out of Boston and manage to marry her without me finding out about it? I don't fucking know. Why didn't you know about it? How did you not find Grace in all of that time? How did you not find Grace? But he tries to turn it around on Sam. He's like, and I've done some research on the family, and I know that you, Hank, have a criminal past, and maybe that runs in the family. And Hank's like, my brother is the most honest, most reliable, most hardworking, most like great man in the world. He's nothing like me, which is true. I mean, they're both dumb. But he's like, don't try and turn this around. Hank says, you're trying to turn this whole thing around, point the finger at Sam, when all of these things that you're saying actually point back to you and make you look more suspicious. Absolutely true. He says, there's something sketchy about you and the way you never showed up in Grace's life until now, all of a sudden. He says, and my instincts are telling me that there's more to you showing up here than you're admitting. You're hiding something. After Hank leaves, because Hank's on to him, and like I've said multiple times, game recognized game. Yes, Hank was a con man, remember? Hank was a prolific con artist. He knows a con artist when he sees one. And after Hank leaves, David. After Hank leaves, David makes a phone call to someone. He says, I've tried everything to break up Sam and Grace, and nothing is working. Turns out the person on the other side of that phone line is none other than, nobody will be surprised, Ivy. It's Ivy. Ivy is the pulling the strings on this, and she tells him, I'm paying you for a mission. You better complete it. You're not going to walk away before this mission is done. You are going to break up Sam and Grace forever. That's what they at. That's what happened.
Is this the first time that we see the connection that David is working for Ivy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's the big reveal. Okay.
That was the big reveal. There've been, if you already know what's going on, there have been a couple of very small clues. But if you didn't know what was going on, you would not have necessarily guessed that this was what was happening. Okay, we're almost done, y'all. Almost done. And listen, we're to the Shui storyline. Like I told y'all last week, y'all can turn the episode off now. I don't give a fuck about this. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Don't turn the episode off.
You are my passion for life. No.
Exactly. Do not turn the episode off. Do not. Because, there's some cute stuff here, but I'm not going to go too in depth in this because I really don't care. I'm sorry. We're going to do this missed connections over and over again. Like we're gonna near miss after near miss. I'm over it. I've been over it since before it began. So anyway, Diana/Sheridan is out for a midnight swim. Luis is also out for a midnight swim. Sheridan or Diana, whatever I'm gonna call her Diana for our purposes here. Diana gets a cramp in her leg, and she starts calling out for help, but she gets kind of pulled under by the undertow. Luis hears the cry for help, and at first he thinks, that sounds like somebody's crying out for help. Kind of sounds like Sheridan. And he's like, hold on, I'm coming. And then he realizes, he's like, you know what? No, my mind's playing tricks on me. That was nothing. But then he hears it again. He's like, no, somebody is definitely out here. So he goes trying swimming, trying to save them. Meanwhile, Brian wakes Liz up. I hate Brian so fucking much. I cannot stand this character. He goes to Liz's room in the middle of the fucking night, knocks on the door, wakes her the fuck up out of her sleep after not paying his bills at her establishment. Let's be clear. Yes. He owes her a ton of fucking money. Has invited some other woman to stay here for free as well, and then has the audacity to come knock on her door in the middle of the night and wake this beautiful woman up and tell her, I want you to go check on Diana because when I left her, she was really sad. Boy, if you don't go lay your fucking ass down, that pissed me off. As a lover of sleep, I would be so mad. I would be so mad. It's like, she's a grown woman. Okay, so she was sad. Yeah, of course she's sad. She has amnesia, and all she can remember is a man that she loved and thinks is dead. Yeah, she's gonna be fucking sad. Let her sleep and leave her alone. But you know what? He was right for them to go check on her, because when they go to check on her, she's not in her room. Another thing is, they don't knock on the door. The reason he even wanted Liz to go check on her is because he was never going to knock on the door. He was just going to let himself into her room. And he was like, it would probably startle her if a man just came into her room, and she might, in the state she's in, she might think that I was the man that she loved. Why would she think that? She never once said you look like him. Not once has she said that. But anyway, they go and check on her room. She's not there. They decide to go look for her down at the beach, find her sarong on the beach. They're like, oh my God, maybe she's in the water. I think they hear her yell for help, and Brian swims out to get her. Now, at one point, we get like a little vision of Sheridan or Diana kissing Luis. Like, he finds her and she kisses him, and I was like, this, y'all not gonna get me. I'm not a fool. I know what this is. She's passed out. Brian brings her back to shore. Liz calls the doctor, and the doctor said, Liz calls the doctor, and the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. I'm sorry, I can't.
No, that you're like unlocking a memory right now.
Liz called the doctor, and the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. No, please take Sheridan up to the hotel. Anyway, Brian runs her up to the hotel. The doctor meets him there. They do CPR on Sheridan, bring her back. She's fine. Or Diana. I keep going back and forth. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Of course, as soon as Brian runs out of view with Diana, Luis comes out of the water, talks to Liz, explains what happened, and Liz explains to him what happened and who it was. And he's very adamant that I need to check on her. Like, the way my fiance died, I can't imagine that happened to another person. Well, it's not. They found her. She's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But whatever. This is the important part. What happens is, eventually, Luis never gets to see Diana. Liz takes him to have a midnight snack and give him a drink or whatever. And at this point, Luis and Tabitha start to share narrator duties, and it was hilarious because Luis and Tabitha, and you might think, LeTara, Tabitha, that's such a random, she's not even in Bermuda. What are you talking about? I know. It is so random, but this is what Passions did. They start to tell the same story at the same time. And the story is about Luis and Sheridan on the Titanic. And at the time on the Titanic, they were named Susan and Liam.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Tabitha explains, before Luis starts telling his part of the story, Tabitha explains that Sheridan and Luis have loved each other across many lifetimes. And so we see an Antony and Cleopatra one. It's very short, but the main one that we dive into this week was them on the Titanic. And then on Luis's side, he explains that he knows this story because Sheridan once told him that and again, he never uses her name. He's like, my fiance told me. Never uses her name. That she was told this by a fortune teller at one of her birthday parties. So now this is the point where they start telling the same story. Basically, we learn that Tabitha casted a spell on specifically Brian, the man playing Brian, who looks like Brian or whatever, that in every lifetime he will come between Sheridan and Luis, and he will be basically the thing that keeps them apart. And it has worked for multiple lifetimes at this point, that he shows up and he breaks them up, kind of. The Titanic thing, I'm definitely gonna put clips of it on the social media this week, because it just needs to be seen. But they really just rip off Titanic almost entirely.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's funny because Timmy says this reminds me of a movie, and Tabitha says, yeah, the movie idea was stolen from yours truly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they go on to rip off Titanic.
Yeah. So if you've seen Titanic, which who hasn't? If you're watching this podcast, you've 100% seen Titanic, because you are in my demographic, and we've all seen Titanic at least twice. I mean,
at least twice, at least 4 times.
So you already know the story of Jack and Rose. That's what they did. Sheridan and Luis are Jack and Rose / Susan and Liam, and it's basically the same story. And yeah, Brian manages to save Sheridan, but doesn't manage to save Luis. And it's unclear if Luis was already dead in the water, or if they just let him die, and he decided not to pull him onto the boat. You know what I mean? And it seems like they would have just pulled him onto the boat anyway, because, well, I guess they probably just didn't have space for dead bodies on those life rafts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I imagine they didn't. Yeah.
I loved when Tabitha she was telling the story, and then you realize that, well, Tabitha was also on the Titanic, but so was Timmy.
Yeah.
A past life version of Timmy. So Tabitha's telling him the story. He doesn't remember, but we get the shot of Timmy, I'm king of the world, doing his little Leonardo DiCaprio, and I thought it was kind of cute.
It was very cute. I also loved as the Titanic was going down, once they hit the iceberg, Timmy and Tabitha are just sitting on the deck having martinis, and Timmy's like, it's a little warm, talking about his drink. And Tabitha, some ice flies over, and Tabitha's like, oh, I could take care of that. And she grabs some ice from the iceberg and puts it in their drinks. I mean, Passions is ridiculous. But yeah, they do the whole Titanic thing. I'm sorry, y'all. I just don't want to really get too much into it. Do you? We can if you want to.
I'm not a big fan of this. I mean, the Titanic story is fine, but I can't with the Brian, Luis, Sheridan story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Luis is the most important thing is Luis is telling Liz this story, and when she goes to check on Brian and Diana, she goes in, and Diana is in her sleep state or whatever, her dream state. She's murmuring, Liam, Titanic, Liam,
iceberg.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was just like, what the fuck is this show? So then Liz is like, oh, I think I know who this woman is. And so Brian is like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And she's like, well, the guest in number 6 was telling me about how his fiance believed that they met on the Titanic and their names were Liam and Susan, and now she's murmuring about the Titanic and Liam and Susan, and I think maybe these two people have a connection. Brian's like, that's absurd. What are you talking about? Which is fair enough, honestly. That is crazy. That's a crazy thing to say and think. And then he's like, and listen, the only reason she's murmuring about the Titanic is because I let her borrow my boom box with this CD, and it's got Titanic, the theme music from Titanic on it. So that's why she's got Titanic on the brain. I mean, I guess. And that's really basically what happens. Sheridan then, or Diana, she at one point, she starts to sleepwalk. She wakes up and she's like, he's here, Liam. He's here. So she wakes up. She makes her way into to Luis's room, and she kisses him calls him Liam. She says Liam, and she kisses him. He doesn't wake up. That's really where we ended with them this week. I mean, I already know that literally nothing is going to come of this, and I think that's why it makes it so hard and frustrating to talk about. Because we have at least 200 episodes before we get to like the reveal of Sheridan being Diana and
Right? Like
Luis.
this is a long story.
Yeah, and Luis realizing she's alive. And so every time they do this, I just get irritated. I get so irritated. I get so irritated because I know that nothing's going to come of it, and it's just extremely frustrating. So, you got anything to add? That's all I have for this week.
No, I'm good with that. We'll leave the rest on St. Lisa's.
Yeah. So, that's all, everybody. Stephen, thank you so much for being with me today. Where can everybody find you online?
I guess you can look me up on my Instagram and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Just at Stephen Wentzell. It was such a joy to be back, LeTara, and congratulations on getting to episode 600. This was a pandemic project, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been such a treat to follow along for throughout the years now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you also have a Substack, yes?
I do, yes. It's the blueprint 902.substack.com. So
I'll
feel
link
free
it in
to
the
follow my work
description.
there.
I will link it in the description because Steven is a journalist, y'all. If you didn't know, Steven's a real journalist. So check out his Substack. And you can find me, as always, on all of the social medias. Check the link in the description for that. And with that, you are my passion for life.